What's up, friends? John Bush here. I want to talk to you about the private realm and the Trinity law method. Doing a webinar with Bradley Logan all about the Trinity, which is a trust, a common law, non-statutory trust, a private membership association, and a 508c1a designation. I'll break down what that means, but we're doing a webinar explaining how you can leverage this model, this strategy, to create generational freedom. If you're doing a business, if you're doing an organization, an effort that's in service to others, it has a divine purpose, it's spiritual, you can use this model to really exercise a whole lot of freedom. You can sign up for the webinar, livefree.academy/Trinity. But I wanted to share, I've generally been pretty skeptical of this whole private realm concept. And I just wanted to share a little bit about what has brought me over the edge and made me a believer. So for folks not familiar, there's this concept that we have two realms, the public realm and the private realm. The public realm it's like the legal world. It's governmental requirements and permission slips and licenses, right? So if you had this idea on how to serve other people and you started an LLC, a limited liability company, in order to limit your liability if something goes wrong or there's some issue or somebody tries to sue you, then this is in the public realm. And I've filed many LLCs in my day. Some of them still around, successful businesses, some of them in the graveyard of businesses and organizations I've been a part of or started. But it's a limited liability company. You file this documentation with the Secretary of State in your particular state, and there's similar models in other countries as well. And now you're doing business, and you get a tax ID number, an employee identification number. You can open a bank account. And the benefit of having this legal entity is to protect you from liability. And you can share equity with a company or a corporation as well. So this would be the public realm. And the understanding, the implication is that you're opting into this whole world of regulatory oversight and you're following the statutes. Right? So that's the public realm. Public as in public government, public institution, lawful or not lawful officials, public officials, right? And then you have the private realm, which is free people getting together and cooperating with one another peacefully. Private membership association is where I first really learned more about this concept. And for example, here's some actual court precedent. There was a Supreme Court case, I don't know the exact year, but essentially I think it was the state of Alabama. They were wanting the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, to reveal all their member documents and all their member lists. And of course this was during the civil rights era, and it would have made the NAACP members unsafe. Anyway, this went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court told the state of Alabama, I'm pretty sure it was Alabama, that they have no right to this information because it's a private association of people working together. It's not a business, it's not a nonprofit, there's no governmental oversight whatsoever. And this is just a precedent. Doesn't mean specifically that if you have a PMA and you are selling raw milk that the FDA is going to get off your back, for example. But it does kind of strengthen the idea that there's private groups and organizations and associations that can hang out and do their thing without the government messing them up. Okay, so that's the private realm. People participating, cooperating with one another. A lot more freedom in this realm and a lot less government oversight, less permission, okay? So this whole public-private thing, for the longest time as an agorist, I've been an agorist for quite some time. An agorist, I believe in the strategy of agorism, this idea that if we want to compete with the state, if we want to change the game and create greater freedom, we shouldn't compete with the state. We shouldn't compete within the state. We shouldn't compete in the state. We should compete with the state. Creating alternative institutions, trade networks, just peacefully cooperating with one another outside of the system. Don't compete within the state, compete with the state. And a lot of agorism is more like scrappy, under the table, trading amongst ourselves, using crypto, using barter, creating these just counter economic networks. There's Luke, he's a good dog. And so I was satisfied with that, and we're building that slowly but surely, all these counter economic networks. The Greater Reset's a big purveyor of community and building this. And so is the Freedom Cell Network. But there's only so far that you can get, considering and understanding that the world is largely dominated by public realm institutions or legacy matrix systems, as Bradley Logan, Scott Jonathan England like to use this term, the matrix. The idea is that we're building the new earth to replace the matrix. But in order to hold title to land, for example, in order to engage in some financial transactions, in order to have agreements, expectations, and certainties with other human beings, there is value in having some non-entity entity, for example. And so, skeptical of this whole private realm thing, understanding, practically speaking, that the governments are going to government. Somebody's asking me recently, like, what do you think about all this Trump stuff? Do you think it's like all fake and they're just setting him up to be this hero that's the victim of the Department of Justice, whatever? And I was like, at the end of the day, Trump's going to Trump, MAGA's going to MAGA, the deep state's going to deep state, right? So the government's going to government. Whether you have public, is a big realization I had too, whether you're doing something in the public realm, legit, above board, not to say private realm's illegitimate, but above board, dotting the I, crossing the T, doing it as a good citizen, you could still get crushed by the government, right? And then on the same token, just because you have a PMA or some 508c1a doesn't mean that the government isn't going to crush you. They don't follow their own rule book. So having said that, being a practical guy, that's always like, what's really going on here? What's the practical side? What's the reality of what we're dealing with? We can't just go sign some paperwork and the government's going to leave us alone. I came to realize that really practically speaking, this Trinity model, non-statutory trust, holding title to land and assets, private membership association, creating agreements and expectations amongst human beings that are voluntarily cooperating with one another, and a 508c1a, a tax exemption, which is operating a church, checking off the boxes, legitimately engaging in having a creed and having a form of worship and a congregation and regular meetings and youth program. This Trinity model, as Bradley Logan calls it, it's this perfect bridge between the matrix world, banks, financial institutions holding title, land, and the private realm. Because you can actually take all of these documents, you can create the trust, the PMA, you can have a faith-based organization, church, and in doing so, you don't have to file anything with any government, but it does give you the advantage of being able to get a bank account if you so choose. Being able to hold title, hold land and assets in title if you so choose. And as I started to realize this, like, wow, we're doing this community development project. Me and the kids always joke around. There's this Family Guy thing that Stewie, the young kid, would mess with Brian, the dog. And Brian was always working on this. Brian was like, oh yeah, I wanted to go do this reality show. It'd be good for me to get away from all my work at home. And Brian's like, what work you doing, Brian? Oh, that novel you've been writing? Yeah, that novel you've been working on for quite some time, a few years now. It's got a beginning, middle, and end. Protagonist learns a lot about himself. Oh, we all come to find that the hero's journey isn't always so happy, is it? Oh yeah, that novel you've been working on for some time. Anyway, my kids and I were joking because we're doing this community development, but it has been a long undertaking. And of course, we have all sorts of other stuff going on, and there's been periods of push and periods of pullback. But we're doing this project. It's going to be an intentional community. There's going to be a spiritual element, a reconnecting with the land, reconnecting with ourselves, harmonizing with one another, and getting back to the land and living in a communal way. And we were trying to fit a round peg into a square hole. We're trying to build the new earth and do it in this manner that's in alignment with our values as free people, but we were wanting to use these legacy institutions like 506B, 506C, SEC exemption on top of a limited partnership with general partners, and we got the IRR expected returns and this, that, and the other. And we spent thousands and thousands of dollars hiring an attorney. And the attorney was there. I mean, I'm sure they do a great job if we were doing like an apartment complex where there's an easy exit and expectation of return, all this stuff. But we're like, no, we're doing this eco community, eco village. There's going to be glamping opportunities, but also people are going to own the land and they're going to have this and that. And they're like, just didn't get it and wasn't very helpful. And then when we came across Bradley Logan, who was preaching, literally preaching this 508c1a, this Trinity model, it just clicked. And it was like, wow. With exactly what we're trying to do, this model fits perfectly. And this is a message because we got a lot of people in our community that are wanting to build intentional communities and do land projects. We actually have like a little mini intentional community here. There's 2 community members, Ryan and Tanya. We're going to add more community members here, and we're going to do this big development. But stuff takes time too, especially when you got all sorts of other ambitions and businesses and wives and parents and cousins and nephews and kids. Anyway, it's like, wow, if you're doing a land project, a community, an intentional community, the Trinity model fits perfect. You got the trust that you can be a trustee, and the trust holds title to the land, and it's all private common law. It's not your identity that's tied to it or on the hook. You're a trustee. It's a separate entity altogether. And in the same way that an LLC shields you from liability, so too does a trust instrument. So that holds title to the land. If you're doing a land project, some institution or person's got to own the land, hold title to the land. Now, of course, if you're doing financing, the bank owns the land. And then you got the private membership association. So if we're doing an intentional community, there's going to be people that are relating to one another, and there's going to be agreements that need to be made, and maybe they're going to purchase or donate to the church in order to get stewardship over a specific lot. So the PMA fits perfectly. And then if you're already behaving in a way that's in service to others with a divine purpose, with a spiritual emphasis, and you're reconnecting with the earth, you're reconnecting with God, you're doing God's work, you're building in community, you're amassing a congregation of people that are on a spiritual journey together, you have a creed, a form of worship, an ecclesiastical government. There's all these criteria that the IRS looks at to determine if something's a church. It just fits perfectly. And the beauty is there's so many cool people in our community, in our freedom movement, that are doing this good work, that are already connected with spirit. I mean, whether it's Christian church, and it's like we're reconnecting with God, giving humans the dominion and stewardship over the earth that he created, and we're preaching on Sunday the gospel, or it's like a new age Gaia dance temple, and we get together and our holy sacrament is cacao, which gets us reconnected with ourselves and the universal energy that's all around us, all encompassing. And when we dance, the rhythm unites us, and that is our expression, our form of worship. That's a church too. Yeah, buddy. Okay, good. All right, I'm going to wrap up here. I'm going to go hang out with my boy. Okay, so it's a great model, and it's practical. It's private realm, which I used to think was like out there, and what does this even mean? But I came to realize that agorism, this whole private realm Trinity thing, is wholly consistent with agorism because it's entirely private outside the system. But like I said, it's an inside-outside path, and that's something that I've communicated to in the CBDC exit plan that I did a while back. Maybe some of you participated. I had this concept of the inside-outside game. There's a lot of people that are established. They have a mortgage, they have a 401k, they have investments, and they just don't want to go full agorist and completely opt out of the system, putting themselves at risk, everything they worked for. Maybe they're trying to pass things on to the future generations. Maybe they want to make sure they have a nest egg so they can be taken care of as they're older. They don't want to take some big, massive risks. So you do the inside game where you have your assets still, you're still paying your mortgage. But on the outside game, you're starting to prepare. You're starting to get a solar system. You're starting to have food storage. You're starting to connect. You're starting to get outside the system sources of income. You're starting to get out uncontrollable, unconfiscatable assets like Bitcoin or Monero, for example. Inside-outside game. This Trinity model is very similar in that it's inside, in that you can interface with the legacy matrix system, bank account, holding title, agreements, credit card, checking account, whatever. Although you probably want to avoid credit to be more consistent with this whole thing. But it's also, so it's inside, but it's also outside. No filing of anything. Everything's completely private. All the agreements are private. The trust documents are private. There's no human being to sue or to bring into the court. And again, it's not to say that, back to the practical side, it's not to say that you just dot the I, cross the T, sign the paperwork. It's all good. That's one of the reasons why I'm really excited to work with Bradley Logan, because he's very practical and he relates this to a game of chess. It's not follow my procedure, sign the documents, you're good, give me a bunch of money, you're fine, you're free now. It's let's make our moves and let's do it rooted from a place of wisdom. Bradley's been doing this for 8 years, this whole private realm thing. He's been an attorney for even longer before, but he opted out, he exited to go do this divine law space. Let's lay our moves and do so in a wise way, but then if our opponents move on us on the chessboard, then we're going to have to be prepared to respond. It's not just a one and done willy-nilly kind of deal. It's a game. It's an ongoing dance. And I really feel confident in the practical side. That's something that I like, because there's gurus and gurus till you're blue in the face. And I don't like the ones that are pie in the sky, fill out these documents and you're all good. I like folks that are like practical. There's no guarantees here. The government doesn't follow their own rule books, but we're laying the groundwork from a place of integrity and honor. And yeah, I'm going to do some more videos in the future about the whole faith versus fear thing, because that played a big role into me stepping into this as well. No longer living in fear, having faith that if we're doing God's work, everything's going to be okay for us. And we are doing God's work. We're bringing free people together, helping them reconnect with the land, live in community, reconnect with themselves. And for me, that's divine work. So, all right, guys, I hope you'll join us for the webinar, livefree.academy/Trinity, livefree.academy/Trinity. It's going to be great, livefree.academy/Trinity. There's going to be opportunities to watch the replay as well if you can't come live, but sign up today. You're going to get a lot out of it. All right, thanks, everybody. Peace.